The morning had started like any other quiet golden, and soaked in the kind of calm that only exists before the rest of the world wakes up. The sun was still stretching over the rooftops, painting long shadows across the neighborhood, and the air carried that cool, crisp bite that disappears by noon. It was the perfect hour for a walk with Max, my German Shepherd service dog. He trotted beside me with the proud, disciplined steps of someone who knew his purpose. Max wasn't just trained, he was exceptional. He could detect oncoming panic episodes, ground me before my body spiraled, and navigate crowded or chaotic situations that would normally overwhelm me. He was my anchor, my living lifeline. The HOA liked to pretend they valued community harmony, but the only thing they really valued was control. And no one embodied that toxic control freak energy better than Karen. Her real name was Meredith, but she had earned the neighborhood nickname long before I moved in. She had the kind of personality that sucked the oxygen out of every room she entered. Even at 6 in the morning, when no sane person is out ruining someone's day, she managed to find something to patrol, criticize, or complain about. Max and I were halfway down Birchwood Lane when I saw her garage door slowly lifting. At first, I hoped she didn't see us, but hope is a fragile thing around people like her. The moment the metal door rattled up, her head popped out, blonde bob sharp as a helmet, lips pursed as if permanently reacting to a bad smell, a bathrobe cinched too tightly around her waist, like she was preparing for battle. She spotted Max and froze. I could practically hear the internal sirens going off in her head before I could even open my mouth to offer a greeting. She stepped out of her garage with her arms crossed. "You need to keep that thing on a shorter leash," she barked, pointing at Max as though he were some kind of wild wolf instead of the calm professional he was. I kept my voice measured. "He's a service dog. He's trained. That's what they all say," she muttered. "This is a family neighborhood. We don't allow dangerous animals roaming around." Roaming? Max was walking heel beside me, perfectly focused, tail relaxed, eyes forward. Max followed rules better than half the HOA board did. I exhaled slowly. He's never been a danger to anyone. Karen narrowed her eyes at Max like she was trying to find something wrong with him, something she could spin into a violation. She took a step closer, and Max subtly shifted his stance, not aggressive, not hostile, just alert, positioning himself slightly between us. It was instinct, not threat. "Well, maybe if you actually respected the HOA guidelines," she snapped, "we wouldn't have to keep having this conversation." This was the first conversation we'd ever had about Max, but I didn't correct her. People like her don't want correction, they want control. I tugged the leash gently. "Come on, Max, let's go." Karen wasn't done. "And make sure he doesn't leave anything on my lawn," she yelled after us, her voice slicing through the quiet morning like broken glass. Max and I continued walking, letting her angry words fade behind us. Usually, this kind of confrontation might trigger my anxiety, but Max sensed the shift in my breathing before it fully formed. He nudged my hand gently with his nose, grounding me. I scratched behind his ear, grateful for the silent reassurance. The rest of the block was peaceful again, birds chirping, sprinklers ticking to life, a neighbor waving from their driveway. For a moment it felt like Karen's bitterness was just a minor bump in an otherwise calm day. But fate wasn't done with me yet. As we rounded the corner toward the park trail, I noticed her again. She was walking, if you could call it walking speed, marching toward us with a clipboard in one hand and her phone in the other. I don't know if she teleported there or just sprinted across lawns like a deranged mall cop, but there she was. I whispered under my breath, "You've got to be kidding me." Karen skidded to a stop right in front of us. "I looked up the HOA rules," she announced triumphantly. While walking, I asked incredulously, "Don't get smart with me," she hissed. Then she lifted the clipboard like it was the 10 Commandments. Section 14. Paragraph C. Aggressive animals must be reported to the HOA board. Max blinked at her calmly. "He didn't bark, didn't growl, didn't move. How is he aggressive?" I asked. "He looked at my cat yesterday." I stared at her, unsure whether she was serious. "My cat was inside the house," she added, as if that somehow strengthened her argument. Max shifted his weight again, just slightly alert, aware, protective. Karen jabbed her pen at him. "There, did you see that? Aggressive posture." He shifted his paw. I said flatly, "Dogs, move." "Well, it made me uncomfortable," she snapped, stepping back as if Max had lunged at her, which he very much did not. "And if I feel threatened, that's enough." She said it with this self-righteous certainty, the kind that comes from never having faced consequences in her entire life. But consequences were coming, just not yet. "Look," I said, trying to de-escalate. "I don't want problems. We're just going for our morning walk." "Oh, you already have problems," she replied, smirking cruelly. "I'm filing a formal complaint, and if your creature ever comes near me again, I'll take matters into my own hands." A chill slid down my spine. That wasn't a threat of reporting to the HOA, that was something else. Max tensed slightly beside me, his ears flicking. He didn't like her tone any more than I did. I didn't argue. I didn't want Max absorbing any more of her hostility. I simply walked away, feeling her glare burning into my back. But the morning had already been poisoned. The walk no longer felt peaceful. I kept glancing back, half expecting her to be following us again. Max stayed close, alert but calm. By the time we reached the park, I felt some of the tension drain away, sunlight filtering through the trees. A couple joggers passing by, a dog walker waving from across the trail. Normal, sane people. Max lay down in the grass while I stretched, his eyes scanning the area in quiet vigilance. Then I heard it, a car door slamming. I turned and saw a familiar rope-flapping furious figure marching toward us from the parking lot. Karen had followed us all the way to the park. I felt my stomach drop. She was gripping something in her hands. Bomb black, metallic. Pepper spray. At that moment, Max sensed my fear spike. He stood up, positioning himself between Karen and me, but still calm, still controlled. "Get that beast away from me," she demanded, raising the spray like she was some kind of vigilante protecting the world from imaginary dangers. "He's not doing anything," I said, stepping back and tugging Max gently. "You're trespassing on community property," she barked. "This is a public park," I replied. "Well, it feels private," she snapped, and my brain short-circuited for a second. People like her don't see the world for what it is. They see it for what they want to control. "That dog is a threat," she insisted, her hand tightening around the pepper spray. "He is a service dog," I said, enunciating each word slowly. "It is illegal to harass or harm a service animal." But that only made her angrier. "Oh please," she scoffed. "Anybody can buy a vest online and pretend their mutt is special. I'm not falling for your scam." I felt heat rising in my chest and gore, fear, disbelief. Max sensed it and pressed his body lightly against my leg, grounding me again. But Karen wasn't done. "You keep bringing this beast around, and he's going to hurt someone," she said, stepping closer. "He has never hurt anyone," I said. "Well," she sneered, "maybe I'll give him a reason." And with that horrifying sentence, the morning peace shattered completely. She raised the pepper spray higher and everything in me went cold. The moment was brief, just a second of stillness before the storm, but it was enough. Enough for Max to recognize danger. Enough for me to realize things had gone far beyond rude HOA harassment. This woman wasn't just entitled, she was dangerous. And before long, she'd learn that what she was about to do wasn't just cruel. It was a federal offense, one that would change her life forever. If I had thought that the morning confrontation with Karen would be the end of it, I was laughably wrong. People like her don't simply move on. They escalate, they obsess. They sink their claws into a situation and drag it into madness, piece by piece, until the whole neighborhood is forced to orbit around their drama like helpless satellites. Karen didn't just dislike Max, she had turned him into her personal vendetta. And over the next several days, her fixation grew into something darker, something almost unhinged. What started as snide comments and exaggerated complaints shifted into full-blown surveillance. It began subtly, a curtain twitch here, a porch light flicking on whenever Max and I walked past, her silhouette standing rigidly behind her blinds like a ghost haunting her own home. I brushed it off at first. Maybe she was just being nosy. But the way her eyes followed us, sharp and calculating, sent an uneasy chill down my spine. One morning, as Max and I rounded the corner by her house, I caught her crouched behind her mailbox. She jumped up so fast, the lid slammed shut with a metallic clang. She pretended to be checking her mail at 6:20 in the morning. Her bathrobe was barely tied, and her hair looked like she'd run through a tornado, but she glared at Max like she'd caught him committing a felony. "Don't you dare let him near my property," she snapped, pointing an accusatory finger at the sidewalk. If the sidewalk itself belonged to her, we're literally just walking by. I said, "We'll see about that," she muttered darkly before storming back inside. Max glanced up at me with a confused little huff, and I patted his head. "I know, buddy, she's weird. Just ignore it." But ignoring her became impossible. The next escalation came in the form of an email, then another, then another. Somehow, she had obtained my email address, and she used it like a weapon. Her messages were laced with accusations, all typed in a deranged combination of caps, lock, and bold fonts. "Your dog is a menace. Your dog is a liability. Your dog is a safety hazard. Your dog will not be tolerated." She CC'd the HOA board, the neighborhood watch group, and at one point even the local gardening club. I wasn't sure if she expected them to prune Max out of the neighborhood, but the effect was the same. She wanted an audience. She wanted a stage. The HOA board replied with polite, canned responses, the kind that said they wanted nothing to do with this circus. "Dear Meredith, thank you for your concern. Please submit a formal complaint form if you feel unsafe." That only fueled her more. She printed the email, highlighted random words, and stuck it to her front door like a public manifesto. By midweek, she had taken her harassment to the physical realm. Small signs began appearing around the neighborhood, cheap laminated sheets, taped to lampposts and mailboxes. They were obviously her doing. The font was Comic Sans. Of course it was Comic Sans, and the wording was as unhinged as I expected. "Beware. Aggressive dog spotted in neighborhood. Report all large breeds to HOA immediately. Protect your pets. A dangerous animal is on the loose." Never mind the fact that Max had never barked at a single person or animal in his life. He was gentle enough to let toddlers tug on his ears and disciplined enough to ignore squirrels. But Karen had crafted her own narrative, one fueled by paranoia and control. and she was determined to spread it like wildfire. The worst part, some neighbors actually believed her. One afternoon, as Max and I walked past the community fountain, an elderly man pulled his tiny terrier close and whispered, "Careful. That's the dog Karen warned us about." His eyes darted at Max as though he expected him to explode. I didn't have the energy to explain. All I could do was keep walking and hope the truth would eventually outweigh the chaos Karen was stirring. But chaos was her specialty. A few evenings later, I found her in the middle of the street, literally, the mid-alarmed, with what looked like a yardstick and a bright yellow tape measure. Max and I had just stepped out for an evening walk when she whipped around like she'd been caught doing something illegal. "What are you doing?" I asked. "Measuring property lines," she said tersely. "I'm documenting how close that animal gets to my yard." "We're walking on the sidewalk. Public property. Sidewalks are she snapped, "meaning the HOA has jurisdiction." I blinked slowly. "That means sidewalk cracks get repaired. It doesn't mean you get to patrol them like your Homeland Security." Her eyes narrowed dangerously. "I'm keeping the neighborhood safe." "From who? Children? Joggers? Responsible pet owners?" "From you," she hissed. Max leaned gently against my leg, sensing my rising pulse. Karen noticed and mistook it for aggression. "He's doing it again," she shrieked. "He's trying to threaten me." Max was literally leaning against me. That was the attack. I walked away, refusing to continue the madness. But she didn't let it go. She followed us halfway down the street, shouting dramatic warnings like a town crier in a medieval plague village. "That dog is a danger. He's unpredictable. I'm warning all of you." Porch lights flickered on, doors creaked open, and neighbors peered out with tired expressions that said this was not the first time Karen had held a one-woman parade of insanity outside their homes. But even that wasn't her most extreme act. The turning point came the next morning. I opened my front door to find a bright orange envelope taped across it dead center. Unavoidable. The paper inside was thick, official, and heavily watermarked as if Karen had raided a stationery store. At the top were the words, "Final Notice of Compliance." It wasn't from the HOA. It was something she had made herself. A fake HOA violation letter. I read it 3 times just to confirm that yes. The language was threatening, the formatting ridiculous, and the signature literally said, "Acting Neighborhood Director Provisional." Karen had appointed herself to a position that didn't exist. The letter demanded that I remove Max from the neighborhood within 48 hours or face community disciplinary action. The only thing she left unclear was whether she planned to exile me, burn my house down, or conduct some kind of neighborhood trial by fire. I walked straight to the HOA office. The director took one look at the letter, rubbed her temples, and said, "For the love of God, this woman again." They assured me they hadn't issued any such notice and that Karen had been warned repeatedly about impersonating HOA officials. "That's illegal, right?" I asked extremely. The director replied, "But unless she does something more serious, we can't take legal action." I didn't know it at the time, but something more serious was already brewing. That night, Karen escalated to full surveillance mode. As Max and I stepped onto my porch for his last walk of the evening, I noticed a small blinking red light in the bushes across the street. I squinted, leaned forward. A camera. Karen had installed a camera directly facing my home. It wasn't pointed at her property. It wasn't even angled discreetly. It was aimed right at my front door like a sniper scope. I marched across the street, and before I even touched the sidewalk in front of her home, her door flew open. "You stay off my property," she screeched. "Move your camera," I said, pointing at it. "It's for neighborhood safety." "No, it's for spying. It's legal," she declared. "It's harassment." She smirked, crossing her arms. "Prove it." And that's when I realized something important. Karen wasn't unhinged because she hated Max. She was unhinged because she couldn't control Max. She couldn't intimidate him. She couldn't manipulate him. She couldn't bully him into submission the way she did with everyone else in the community. Max didn't care about her self-appointed importance, her imaginary authority, or her theatrics, and that infuriated her. Her obsession wasn't about safety, it was about dominance. She wanted the neighborhood to revolve around her rules, her fears, her paranoia. And Max, with his silent strength and calm discipline, represented everything she couldn't control. Her resentment grew into a storm. And storms eventually break. The next morning, the day everything changed, Karen waited for me. Not behind a mailbox, not behind her blinds, not with her tape measure or fake violation letters. She stood at the end of her driveway, fully dressed, eyes cold, breathing heavy, gripping something tightly in her hand. Pepper spray, the same bottle she had threatened us with before. Her obsession had crossed the line. Anger had reached its peak, and she was ready to unleash it. Little did she know, she was about to commit a federal crime, and it would cost her far more than she ever imagined. The morning everything changed didn't feel like the beginning of a disaster. It felt normal. A thin mist hovered over the lawns. Birds were chirping lazily as if the world was waking up in slow motion. And Max walked beside me with the familiar calm of a dog who had done this routine thousands of times. His tail swayed gently, his ears rotating periodically to scan the environment, not in fear, just in awareness. But the air felt wrong somehow, thick, heavy, like the quiet before a thunderstorm. I didn't see Karen at first, and maybe that was what made me lower my guard. For the first time in days, her blinds weren't cracked open. Her mailbox lid wasn't slanted suspiciously, and her porch camera wasn't motion triggering with every step we took. For a brief moment, I wondered if she'd finally gotten bored of her crusade against us. Should have known better. Max and I had just reached the corner where Birchwood Lane met Cedar Trail, the same corner where she'd previously ambushed us. When Max suddenly stopped, he didn't bark, he didn't growl, he simply froze. Tail stiff, ears pointed like daggers toward the row of bushes lining the right side of the sidewalk. Max never froze without reason. Max, what is it, boy? He didn't move. His chest expanded slowly, controlled, his head tilted just a fraction to the left, then to the right. He'd sensed someone, followed his gaze just in time to see the bushes rustle. Then she stepped out. Karen, but not the usual clipboard-wielding Karen. This was a different version, hair tightly pulled back, sunglasses even though the sun hadn't risen fully yet, and both hands hidden behind her back as she approached in quick, determined strides. Max positioned himself between us instantly, his body rigid but composed, guiding me slightly backward. His training engaged automatically. Stay calm, I whispered, more to myself than to him. Karen stopped a few feet ahead, breathing hard, her chest rising and falling like she'd run a marathon or like she was preparing for battle. You think you can ignore me? She snapped, voice dripping with rage. I blinked. Ignore you? You've been harassing. Shut up, she screamed, loud enough to echo. Max pressed closer. My heart rate spiked. Karen's hand lifted slowly, and the morning sunlight glinted off the small black canister she was holding. Pepper spray. Real pepper spray, industrial grade, the kind marketed as maximum strength. My breath hitched. Put that down. You think you can bring an aggressive beast into this neighborhood and endanger everyone? You think no one's going to do anything about it? Max has never done anything to anyone. He looked at me wrong, she hissed. That's not a crime. No, she said, her voice lowering to a venomous whisper, but this is self-defense. Karen, she lunged forward. And then time slowed. Max didn't move aggressively. He didn't bark, didn't growl, didn't bare his teeth. He simply took one step to shield me with his body, the way he'd been trained to do since he was a puppy. But Karen saw movement, and in her delusional, self-righteous mind, movement meant threat. She raised the spray. Stop, I yelled. She pressed the trigger. There was a sharp, violent hiss, a stream of orange mist blasting directly toward Max's face. Everything in me shattered. No, Max. He jerked back instantly, but not fast enough. The spray hit the right side of his muzzle, and he yelped, a sound I had never heard from him, a sound that tore through me like a blade. He stumbled sideways, shaking his head desperately, pawing at his face, trying to wipe away the burning chemical that was already searing into his eye and nostril. I ran to him, dropping to my knees as I cupped his face. His breathing was rapid, shallow, panicked, something he had never been in all the years I'd known him. Max didn't panic. Max didn't lose control, but pain changes everything. His eye was already red, swelling, leaking tears as he pushed his face into my shoulder, seeking relief he couldn't find. And then something else happened. I wasn't expecting. A witness screamed. I turned. A jogger, a middle-aged man in running gear, had seen the entire thing. What the hell is wrong with you? He shouted at Karen, rushing over. Karen recoiled like a vampire caught in sunlight. She attacked me. Her dog attacked me? I was defending myself. He didn't attack you, the jogger yelled. He was standing still. I saw it. You sprayed him for no reason. Karen's face twisted into something almost demonic. He's lying, she screamed. You're all against me. Max tried to stand, but he staggered. I wrapped my arms around him, steadying him, my chest tightening with panic. I need help, I said, voice trembling. You need to be arrested, the jogger snapped at Karen. He's right, another voice added, a woman from across the street with her phone already raised. Recording everything. Karen's eyes widened. Stop recording me. Oh no, the woman said coldly. This is going online. Karen lunged toward her. Back off, the jogger warned, stepping between them. And that was when Karen made her second mistake of the day. She charged. The jogger dodged, grabbed her wrist, and pinned her arm long enough to rip the pepper spray out of her hand. Give that back, Karen shrieked. No, he said, throwing it into the grass. You're dangerous. Dangerous wasn't strong enough a word. She was unhinged, and she had just committed a crime she didn't understand. Not yet, but she would soon. My hands shook as I pulled my phone from my pocket. I'm calling the police. Karen froze. No manners, no way, she stammered, her voice cracking. You can't. I didn't do anything wrong. I was protecting the neighborhood. I glared at her, my voice trembling with a rage I could barely contain. You attacked a service animal. Do you understand what that means? She blinked, confused. It's just a dog. He's a service dog. I roared, the words ripping out of me. The jogger nodded sharply. That's a federal offense. For the first time since I'd met her, Karen looked afraid. she whispered. No, I didn't. No. No one told me. It's your responsibility to know, I said, lifting Max's face so she could see what she'd done. He could go blind. Her expression shifted not to remorse, but to defense. I'm not responsible if you didn't warn me. I did warn you, I snapped, dozens of times. You ignored me. You stalked us. You followed us. And now, you've assaulted my service dog. Police sirens echoed in the distance. Karen spun around like a trapped animal. No. I can't be arrested. I'm on the HOA board. I'm the neighborhood safety. You're a criminal, the jogger said tightly. She backed away, panic rising. Please, let's just forget this. I'll apologize. I'll bake you something. I'll pay for the dog's eye. Just don't call the police. They're already coming, the woman recording said calmly. Karen's face collapsed into desperation. No, she whispered, shaking her head violently. This isn't fair. But life isn't fair, and you can't fix cruelty with excuses. By the time the police arrived, Max was still whimpering softly. His face buried in my chest was shaking, angry, terrified, heartbroken, but also resolute. When the officers got out and rushed toward us, I stood and pointed directly at Karen. She attacked my service dog. Karen's mouth fell open. I didn't know it was illegal. I thought it was just ma'am, the officer cut in. What you did is a federal crime. She froze. A federal what? Intentional harm to a service animal is a federal offense, he said. We need you to put your hands behind your back. No, wait, she screamed as another officer approached. You can't arrest me. I'm not a criminal. This is my neighborhood, the jogger muttered under his breath. Not anymore. Karen thrashed as the officers grabbed her arms. You're all jealous of me, she shrieked. This is a conspiracy. I was protecting you. No one listened, no one believed her. Not this time. Not after what she'd done. As they handcuffed her. One of the officers approached me gently. We'll call emergency animal services, he said softly. Your dog will get immediate medical care. I nodded, tears finally spilling down my face. Max lifted his head weakly, leaning into me, trusting me even through the pain. Hang on, boy, I whispered. You're going to be okay. But this was just the beginning. Justice had arrived. But the fallout, that was still to come. The chaos of the attack faded into a blur of sirens, neighbors whispering behind fences, and Karen's voice echoing through the street as she was taken away in handcuffs. But even after the police cruiser disappeared down the road, panic still pulsed through my chest like a heartbeat that wouldn't settle. Max lay beside me on the back seat of the emergency animal services van, his breathing soft but uneven. His injured eye twitched, the swelling growing by the minute. The chemical burns had turned the fur around his muzzle a harsh reddish hue. Every few seconds he let out a quiet, pained whimper, each one like a knife twisting deeper inside me. The paramedic beside me, a calm woman named Riley, kept gently flushing Max's eye with saline as she explained what would happen next. We need to get him to the clinic fast. Pepper spray causes severe burns in dogs. But you did the right thing by keeping him still. You probably saved his eye. Her words should have comforted me, but they didn't. Not when Max's life and vision hung in the balance, because of someone's hatred and ignorance. When we arrived at the emergency vet hospital, they rushed Max inside while I filled out forms with shaking hands. Every signature looked like a scribble. I couldn't focus on anything except the fear clawing through me. After what felt like hours, the vet finally stepped out. A middle-aged man with gentle eyes and a voice that carried both authority and empathy. Stable, he said. I exhaled for the first time since the attack. We've flushed the chemical from his eye and started anti-inflammatory treatment. The next 24 hours are critical. We won't know the full extent of the damage until the swelling goes down. But he's strong. He's fighting. Max fighting. Even in pain. Can I see him? I whispered. Double quotes, yes, but only for a few minutes. He led me to a recovery room where Max lay on a padded blanket, hooked up to an IV. His tail thumped weakly when he sensed me. I knelt beside him, stroking his head carefully. You're going to be okay, boy, I whispered, my voice cracking. I promise. He nudged my hand with his nose, a small, exhausted gesture of reassurance. Even hurt, even blinded in one eye, he was still trying to comfort me. When the vet gently ushered me out, I stepped back into the waiting room. And that's when I noticed two men approaching, both wearing dark suits, badges at their hips. Federal agents. The taller one spoke first. Are you the owner of the service dog involved in the assault? Yes, I said cautiously. I'm Agent Carter, and this is Agent Brooks. We're with Federal Protective Services. My pulse quickened. Federal, why? Why are you here? Because the incident this morning falls under federal jurisdiction, Agent Brooks explained. Harming a service animal isn't just a misdemeanor or a state issue. Under the Federal Service Animal Protection Act, it's a criminal offense with severe penalties. I swallowed hard. Karen said she didn't know he was a service dog. Agent Carter shook his head. The law doesn't care what she claims she didn't know. The vest clearly indicated his status. We saw the footage. He nodded. Your neighbor's video? And the jogger's recording. So the entire attack had been documented from multiple angles. Where is she now? I asked. Agent Brooks exchanged a grim look with his partner. Being processed. She's facing multiple charges. I blinked. Multiple? Yes, Carter replied. Assault on a service, animal endangerment, false statements to law enforcement, harassment, and impersonation of an HOA official. My jaw dropped. They're actually charging her for pretending to be Oh yes, Brooke said. That's fraud. And because she used it to intimidate you in attempt to force you out of the neighborhood. It's also coercion. A mix of relief and shock washed over me. For what it's worth, Carter added, it's very likely she'll face jail time. Jail time. Real consequences. For once, the world wasn't letting her slip through the cracks. The agents took my official statement, then left to continue processing the case. When they were gone, the weight of exhaustion finally hit me. I sank into one of the waiting room chairs, staring at the tiled floor as the morning sunlight slowly brightened through the windows. Hours passed. The hospital staff brought me coffee I barely tasted. My phone buzzed nonstop. Neighbors asking what happened, friends sending support, the jogger sending me another copy of his footage just in case. Then, late that afternoon, the police called. Are you available to come to the station? The officer asked. We need you to review Karen's statement. I hesitated. How is she? Agitated, the officer replied, and refusing to cooperate. I wasn't surprised. When I arrived, the station smelled faintly of coffee and printer ink. An officer led me to a small room where I could hear muffled shouting from inside the interrogation area. She's in there, the officer said quietly, and you should know she isn't taking responsibility. I watched through the glass as Karen ranted at the detective. You people are blowing this out of proportion, she screamed. All I did was protect the community. That dog is vicious, and she's using it as an excuse to get me arrested because she hates me. The detective looked exhausted. Ma'am, there is video evidence, multiple witnesses, and your emails. I was trying to be helpful, she shrieked, slamming her hands on the table. Threatening people is not helpful, the detective said dryly. They're jealous of me, of my position. You are not an HOA official. Karen's face twisted. They should have made me one. I'm the only one who cares about safety. Her voice cracked, desperation bleeding through her anger. I don't deserve this, she whispered. They're criminals, not me. Then she broke down crying, but it wasn't the crying of someone remorseful. It was the crying of someone who couldn't accept that the world didn't revolve around her. When they brought me into a separate room, the detective handed me a written copy of her statement, that it was filled with delusions, claims that Max lunged at her, claims that I encouraged him, claims that she was defending her life, claims that the neighborhood had appointed her head of safety. The detective sighed. We've seen her type before. People who abuse small amounts of power, then panic when it backfires. So what happens next? I asked quietly. She'll be transported to county jail for processing. Federal agents will take over from there. Will she get out on bail? Possibly, he said. But with the charges she's facing, it won't be cheap. As I left the station, the weight of everything hit me again. The attack, the fear, the chaos, Karen's breakdown, Max's pain. I drove back to the vet hospital with numb hands gripping the steering wheel. When I walked into the room, Max lifted his head. The swelling had begun to go down. His eye was still red, watery, damaged, but he was alert, present, alive. He nudged my chest with his nose, tail thumping weakly. I crumpled to the floor beside him, wrapping my arms around his neck as tears finally spilled freely. You're okay, I whispered. You're really okay. But even as relief washed over me, I knew one thing for certain. This wasn't over. Karen's arrest was only the beginning. The neighborhood would explode with drama. The HOA would be forced to confront their problem member. Neighbors would pick sides. Rumors would swirl like wildfire. And when Karen eventually returned, because people like her always find a way back, there would be fallout. Massive fallout. But for now, Max was safe. Justice was rolling forward like a wave that couldn't be stopped, and Karen was learning the hard way that entitlement has consequences. The morning Karen decided to destroy my life, or so she thought, started like any other. The sky was washed in a soft orange glow, and the world felt unusually calm for a Tuesday. My service dog, Atlas, trotted beside me with his vest neatly strapped on. The bright blue patch reading service animal, do not distract. He was alert, attentive, and every bit the hero life had molded him to be. I didn't know it then, but within the next hour, that same vest would become the center of a federal investigation, an HOA meltdown. And the reason Karen would end up in handcuffs. As we stepped out of the townhouse, Atlas nudged my leg gently, guiding me as he always did. The faint dizziness from my neurological condition had been bothering me more than usual lately. But Atlas was trained for this, detecting changes in my balance, sensing spikes in my heartbeat, grounding me when I drifted. He wasn't just a dog. He was independence, safety, freedom. He was the difference between a functional day and a medical emergency. The neighborhood was quiet except for the sound of sprinklers ticking in the distance. But even in peaceful silence, something felt off. Atlas sensed it too. His ears perked up and his head turned slightly left, toward the end of the block where Karen lived. I didn't see anyone, but Atlas didn't react unless there was a reason. Come on, boy, I whispered. Ignore whatever it is. Let's just go. But ignoring Karen was never an option, not for her. and certainly not that morning. We made it halfway down the sidewalk before she appeared. Stepping out from behind her hedge like some Walmart version of a horror movie villain, her bathrobe was still open at the collar, hair frizzy like she had been electrocuted, and in her hand was a bright pink aerosol can. I froze. Atlas immediately stood half a step in front of me, protective but controlled, watching her with cautious eyes. Well, Karen said, her voice dripping with venom disguised as false sweetness. There you are, walking that beast again. Atlas didn't move, didn't growl, didn't bark. He stood still, trained, patient, and entirely none. But that didn't stop her from glaring at him like he was a wild wolf loose in the suburbs. He's a service animal, Karen, I said evenly. You know that. Oh sure, she scoffed, waving her free hand. Anyone can buy one of those fake vests online. This dog is aggressive. He stares at me. He lunges toward my property. Karen? I cut in before she could build another lie. Atlas has never set foot on your property, and he's legally protected. You can't. Oh, I can, she snapped, lifting the pink can slightly. And I will. The HOA rules say. HOA rules don't override federal law, I reminded her. You can't harass a service animal. You definitely can't touch him. She looked at me the way a toddler looks at a parent who tells them they can't have candy. For a split second, I thought reason might actually get through to her. I was wrong. The rage that spread across her face didn't look human. Her nostrils flared, her lips tightened, and then, without warning, she took a step toward Atlas. Karen, I warned, my voice rising sharply, don't you dare. But she already had her finger on the nozzle. Your mutt keeps walking too close to my yard, she snapped, and I'm sick of it. Consider this a warning. And then I heard the distinct, terrifying hiss of aerosol. Time slowed. All I saw was the burst of liquid spraying from the can in a violent cloud. It caught the morning sunlight in a sickening sparkle as it shot directly toward Atlas's face. Atlas jerked back, but not fast enough. The mist hit his left eye and snout, and instantly he let out a sharp, pained yelp, a sound I had never heard from him before. Not once. My stomach dropped. I shouted, dropping to my knees beside him. He pawed at his face, whining as he pressed his head against my chest, desperate for relief. His breathing turned fast and panicked. What the hell did you spray him with? I yelled, my voice shaking with fury and terror. Karen crossed her arms smugly. It's just pepper spray. Perfectly legal. My blood ran cold. Pepper spray on a service dog? Are you insane? I shouted. That's a federal offense. You can go to prison. She snorted. Don't be dramatic. It's not like I hurt a person. She gestured dismissively. It's just an animal. Just an animal. Those 3 words snapped something inside me. I stood up so fast that Karen flinched backward. I wasn't a confrontational person, but hearing her reduce Atlas, my lifeline, my medically trained partner, to just an animal made my hands shake with adrenaline. You assaulted a service animal performing its duty, I said through clenched teeth. That's a federal crime under the ADA. You could face thousands in fines and jail. Karen rolled her eyes. Oh please. No one's going to arrest a neighborhood mom for disciplining a dangerous dog? Behind me, Atlas whimpered again, and I felt rage boil in my chest. This isn't discipline, I said. It's abuse. I'm not scared of you, she shot back. I'm not scared of your dog either. But her voice shook. For the first time, she realized she had crossed a line she could not stomp her way out of. I didn't waste another second. My hands were trembling as I dialed 911, but my voice came out strong. Yes, this is an emergency, I said. A woman just pepper sprayed my service dog. He's in distress. I need medical help, and I need law enforcement. Karen's face went pale. Oh my God, seriously, she shrieked. You're calling the police. You assaulted a working service animal. I shouted. You think I'm just going to walk away? Atlas pressed his head against my leg. I stroked his neck, trying to keep him calm as he shook from the pain. When the first police cruiser arrived, Karen's confidence crumbled. The officer stepped out, and before I even began explaining, he saw Atlas's swollen, watery eyes and immediately called for animal emergency care. Karen started babbling excuses. It was she insisted. The dog was aggressive. It was coming onto my property. The officer cut her off. Ma'am, the dog has a clearly marked service vest. You sprayed him while he was assisting his handler? That is a federal offense. Her mouth dropped open. No, she stammered. That can't be right. It's just a dog. It's not federally. Yes, it is, the officer said firmly. And you're lucky the dog is still responsive. We're required to take this very seriously. Another officer approached, and they separated us. One talking to me, the other talking to Karen. The animal paramedic arrived, flushing Atlas's eyes with water and special solution as he whimpered softly. Seeing him like that hurt, scared, trying so hard to stay strong despite the pain made my heart ache. I turned back toward Karen, who was now visibly shaking as the officers began informing her of the potential charges. Interference with a service animal, animal cruelty, harassment, endangerment, and depending on the severity of the dog's injuries, potential federal charges. Karen's face drained of blood. But I didn't know, she cried. No one told me. The HOA didn't say. Federal law does not require warning labels, the officer replied. Ignorance is not a defense. Karen looked at me, desperation replacing her usual smugness. Please, she begged. Don't press charges. I have kids. I felt nothing. Atlas had saved my life multiple times. He didn't deserve this. And if she walked away without consequences, she'd do it again, maybe to someone else. Maybe to another animal. Maybe worse. This isn't about revenge, I said quietly. It's about accountability. Karen sobbed, but I didn't look away. For the first time since moving into the neighborhood, Karen finally learned something important. Some lines can't be crossed. Some actions have consequences. And when you attack a service dog, you're not just breaking a rule, you're breaking federal law.